Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, I would like to discuss with many of you what we can do when it comes to midlife and wondering what do we do with our lives next. Usually by then, a lot of us have stockpiled a lot of what we would call our personal past, our history, a lot of the things that we've experienced. Sometimes these are sentimental things, and sometimes these are just things. The question is what do we do next when we find ourselves lost on that road to move forward? On the program today, we'll be joined with a wonderful performer, and he's also a great public speaker who's also been able to help people from around the world become inspired on how to be able to see and gain more purpose from their lives. He's also worked with many spiritual leaders, some of whom we've actually had here on the program today, including Dr. Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, and Deepak Chopra. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Mr. Barry Dennis. He is the author of the Chotchky Challenge. Barry, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Well, you're so welcome. Glad to be here.
So coaching, you decided to go this direction to be able to inspire people with what is known as the Chotchky Challenge. Tell us about this.
Yeah, the Chotchky Challenge. Well, of course, it relates to how you set things up this morning. As we go throughout our lives, especially in this country and developed countries, we're so blessed. One of the things I've said is, in many cases, we're so blessed that we've actually become stressed. So our blessings have become a burden. In other words, we have so much, and we have so much given to us, and disposable income, and just things that come into our life, and that's why I call it the Chotchky Challenge. It's become more difficult in this day and age for many of us to have less than it is to have more. So we just have too much. I call it the line of excess. So as we go throughout our lives, most things that we have around us have a good purpose, and they're useful. But what's happened is we sort of go over this line of excess, and at that point it becomes what I call tchotchke, something that's pretty much it has no use to us really. It actually causes stress because there's too many, and we have 3 or 6 or 12 or 20 of them, and we don't know where to put it. And when we move, we pack it up and wonder what in the world were we thinking when we got it, and what do I do with it now? And when I get there, should I give it away or should I keep it? Will I really use this in 20 years? I mean, it gets to be a crazy mind game. And that, of course, is just the physical things. The tchotchke then creates emotional stress, and there is emotional stress, just flat out. I call it emotional latchkey. So all these things, it's a process of letting go. And in our society, we've been told it's a process of gaining, right? So
Sure.
It's a game that we're playing. So we're playing this game where we're told it's a process of gaining, and he who dies with the most toys wins. Well, nowadays, for most of us, because we are so blessed, it's become more difficult not to have stuff, and that goes for our body. One of the things in my book I make the metaphor, and I really think it's true, that everything pretty much is a storage space. So, in other words, our body is a storage space, and in our body we store energy. It's called fat and fat cells, and our mind is a storage space for information. Literally, neurons fire; they keep information up there, and our surroundings are a storage space. Our trunk, our car, our home, everything, and as soon as we go past the line of excess, well, it starts to get uncomfortable. It starts to get a little stressful. And in our body, of course, once we have too much of that energy stored in our body, then we get too heavy, and that gets stressful. When we have too much information in our mind that's not healthy information, that's not positive, that's not helping us, then we have too much information up there that's useless information. And, of course, around our home, we see it, too much stuff. We don't know what to do with it. It causes stress. We don't know where to go now. And certainly when we reach 50 and beyond, it's that time often in our culture that we say, we spend the first 40 or 50 years of our lives gathering, and then we spend the next 40 or 50 years of our lives trying to get rid of it. So it's kind of a crazy game, and my book is, we want to circumnavigate that whole insanity and just live a life that is of the soul. And so that's what I want to do in my book, is help people really let go of things they don't need, and then stop bringing in stuff they don't need, so that they can then use their time, their energy, and their money for only what really matters to them. Instead of the agenda of what I call the Chotchky campaign, we begin to simply use our energy, which is in several forms, but our money and our time and our effort, for that which serves a higher purpose, which serves our agenda of being in joy, and serves our relationships create stronger bonds between us and our children and our significant others and our good friends, rather than using that energy and that time and that money on stuff that we never needed in the first place. So that's the Chotchky challenge.
Now, Barry, tell me, you've been doing this for quite a while, and I'm curious, when a person comes to you, what generally are they seeking from you?
I have a spiritual movement called Coexist Celebration, and I was a senior minister for a church for 8 years that I started an independent church called Celebration Church, and I do coaching, and now I'm speaking all over the world and in all different kind of venues. And people are basically looking to, in general, it's sort of a generic request, I would say, of just sort of the. I remember recently I was on the islands in Hawaii doing what I do, and a woman just sat down and said, "Fix me."
But you know what's funny about that statement, Barry, real quick, is a lot of times people genuinely really don't know what it is or where to even start.
No, that's the thing. They don't know. And when it comes to, and that's actually what I tried to capture in my book. I tried to capture the essence of something because I didn't know what it was either. Like in my own life, I was feeling stressed and overwhelmed and not as connected with my children as I wanted to be, and my wife as wanted to be, and some of my friends as I wanted to be, and I didn't know what it was. And one day I lost my temper and yelled at my son, and that I'd never done that. And I made a vow when he was born. When I cut the cord and I held that child in my hand for the first time, I made a sacred vow, promise to that child and my other child, and to myself and my wife, that I would never parent out of anger, that I would always bring consciousness and awareness, because when we go into anger, well, we're just drudging up our own past. That's pretty much what we're doing, and we're throwing it up on somebody else. So parenting and being in relationship is about avoiding that anger and staying present with what's happening here and now, instead of bringing your anger from the past with you, and anywhere you felt less than, that tends to bring up anger. With our children, they're such targets for our own issues. And so,
aren't they? Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're just giant walking targets for our own issues, and that does nothing but continue the dysfunction. So when we parent out of anger, we continue the dysfunction. They parent out of anger, and then the next parent, blah, 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 and it goes on, right? So breaking that chain, right? And that was very important to me, and I did a good job of it. But one day, like all parents, I lost my temper with my son and one of my kids, and I didn't know where it came from. I couldn't figure it out. I was just like, what was that? And it had to do with a morning, a typical morning, just trying to get my two boys off to school, and the stuff and the distractions and the junk from the Xbox 3000, and never mind the fact that we had 3 versions of Xbox whatever on the floor, which didn't fit in the drawers anymore because we had too many versions. They were supposed to go in the drawer, but how could my kids fit it into a drawer when it's already full of cords and nuts and remotes that we don't know what they go to, and all this stuff, and then trying to get my son to school and going to his bedroom and being overwhelmed with all the toys, all the extra clothes, shoes, socks, basketballs, just overwhelmed. And he ended up in the closet in tears because he couldn't find the pants he wanted to wear. But what was wrong with the pants he has on? He already has 27 pairs of pants. Why can't you just be happy with the pair of pants he bought?
Sure.
He was couldn't find his backpack, and I just was like at my wit's end, and I yelled at him. And when that was all over, I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't know who I was. Why did that happen? And this led me on a journey, and I really wanted to figure out, what is all this? What's this happening? Everything from the internet to the excess of information, asking me if I want to shrink this or enlarge that, and all the gossip and all the gossip magazines and all this stuff. It was just, all of it seemed to overwhelm me. And one day I was with my good friend Dr. Harold Bloomfield. Maybe he's been on your show as well before. He's a great teacher, and I brought all this up to him. I said, what the heck is it, man? Is there something going on? It's like it's in our society. It's part of our norm, but it's not good. It's like normal, I said, but it's not healthy. And what is it? And he, being of Jewish descent, and Chotchky being a Yiddish word, which is Russian, Jewish, German, and English mixed, is an amazing language. He looked at me and said, oh, Barry, I think you were talking about Chotchky. And I didn't know what it meant, but as I began to research the word and get a feel for what that word really means, I realized that word does encompass It was the best word I could find that would really explain kind of what we're doing and what we're living and what our agenda has become, even though it's not our true priorities, and that is Chotchky.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting, too, because when it comes to somebody who's listening to this program, or perhaps they've come across an article, or maybe even on television, they've been told it's time to declutter and to get rid of things that you just no longer find useful, that you don't really need, perhaps even want. And there seems to be a real pull for some people to be able to get rid of things. There's that pull of, it's like that feeling, if I get rid of this, but what if I need it or I could use it somehow?
Yeah.
I should save it just in case. Have you figured out why people feel that way sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
Or most of the time, I should say.
Yeah, I definitely have that. I have a whole chapter in my book called Just in Case. And, what's going on there? I mean, there's a whole lot of psychology happening with us. And there's a lot of different angles I can attack this question. But one of the most direct ways is to talk about what I would call poverty consciousness. And this is this idea in us, and we can go back very far with this. But it's the idea that there's never going to be enough. And so because of that, because we're afraid there's never going to be enough, which is rooted in a fear that I'm going to die if I don't have enough. Okay, and this goes back to, it really does, seriously.
Yeah, imagine trying to fit all that stuff into your coffin or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, exactly, And so, it's rooted in this fear, like literally, and it goes back to, the amygdala part of our brain, okay? So the amygdala is the ancient part of our brain that still controls things a lot, and I talk about in my book, the next stage of evolution really is to begin to overcome our fears, and because fears are, for the most part, they're not real. They're often false evidence, FEAR, false evidence appearing real, and coming up, overcoming those fears and beginning to unhook from the amygdala, which creates that fear in us and that flight, that attack and flight and all that stuff. So it's from this place of fear that we think, oh, I got to have more, But the thing is, here's the thing we've done. We've become such powerful animals on this earth that we have altered our surroundings to take care of ourselves. We've literally altered the world where we were hunter and gatherers for millions, depending on how you want to look at it, but millions of years. We were in this constant state of fear because we were going to die if we didn't have food and clothing and shelter. And so that fear, that way of being, is still with us. We literally still live in that place. The thing is, so we had to go out and bring our surroundings to us. We had to go hunt and gather and bring it back to us. Well, we've altered our surroundings, so we've actually created a whole world for many and most of us, certainly in our country, where it has come to us and is with us and is right there, and it's packaged and it's easy and it's right in front of us. But our brain hasn't altered to work with the new reality we've created. So now food is right there, so we don't even have to work to get it, and it's all around us. And instead of altering our actions and our habits to match our new surroundings, we just keep eating.
Right.
We just think, because that's still in us. It's still in us. I got to eat or I could die. I got to eat or I could die. And so now, what the irony of the whole thing is, we've altered our surroundings so that we can be safe, but that new surrounding, in many ways, is killing us. It's hurting us, because now, of course, we have this heart disease, and our children have this weight problem and all that stuff. Well, that's the same thing, and I call that foodachki. It's excess, and it's created because we've literally altered our surroundings, but we have not altered our consciousness to match our new surroundings, which is we're okay. We brought it all to us. It's right here. There's enough food. It's just in the store down the street. There's enough stuff. There's enough clothing. There's enough everything. So now the biggest step then is to alter our habits to match our new surroundings, which is really exciting. I mean, when we can do this, and we're doing it to a degree, but we must do it more. When we can do this, we can take advantage of the incredible work that we've done in altering our surroundings to free up our time and our energy and our money. But what we do is we still live in fear, so we eat too much and we buy too much and we have too much and we surround ourselves with stuff because there's still this part of our brain that thinks, I've got to get it now or it's going to go away, and I got to have more, it's going to go away. And that is actually what's hurting us, is actually what's killing us. So until we until we shift our consciousness to match our new surroundings, we're working against ourselves. That's where these hoarders come from and all that. That's where the obesity problems come from. That's where all that's come from a society of excess where we haven't shifted our consciousness yet.
There was a time I watched a program produced by National Geographic in which families actually go to other countries in different parts of the world, and I believe it's for about a month they live the way these people do. And, of course, these are families from America, so they can get a better understanding about what societies outside of the United States are like.
Yeah.
One particular family went to an island that I believe was somewhere within the South Pacific considered to be the island of love.
Yes.
And, it's fascinating. First of all, they show you how this family lives, and then they, of course, go to this island or wherever they may go, and they say, this is how these people live, and this is what you need to do. What was fascinating about this is the husband was an engineer, and you can clearly see that he didn't wear the pants, so to speak, in his family. It was his wife.
Sure.
And as I was taking a look at, one of the things you talk about in your book about your calendar, she had this calendar loaded with activities, and I'm looking at this from my perspective going, there seems to be a lot of just stupid nonsense that she feels is so important for this family to be engaged in. Okay. So on this island, what happens is the women actually do all the work and the men pretty much sit around all day. So, of course, he was digging this. Now, when it came time to the fishing or supplying the food, that's when the men were actually engaged in the process of anything, and it was just the men only.
Yeah.
And she was really hard on her husband, of course. Don't you think you're going to get used to this? And then she began to question, about their lifestyle because it was so incredibly lackadaisical, so to speak. This is the way these people have been living for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, who knows. And she finally broke down halfway through this month going, these people can't believe this is all there is in life. And I thought to myself, boy, this is somebody who just maybe doesn't really get it. But anyway, I'm sure you've worked with a lot of that kind of stuff, especially when we talk about the calendar and the idea that I'm so important. I've got all these meetings and things that I got to go to. I'm not locked down. As a matter of fact, just recently when we had Dr. Joe Dispenza on the program, we were told by his assistant, this is one of the most busiest people I have ever met. And I think to myself, does anybody ever take time just to relax and look around? Tell us, though, that can be pretty detrimental to a person after a while.
Yes, absolutely.
Even though Dr. Joe does do great work. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. He is a friend of mine. But yeah, it's a huge issue that you're touching on, and I call it, one of the words I have is eventotchky. I've created a whole
eventotchky.
Yeah, I've created a whole new language in my book. So I have words for everything, and the reason it's funny, but there's also another reason for it because it actually helps us get perspective. What you're talking about is perspective, and getting that perspective and like just going, hold it, just. John Lennon wrote the song, I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. We all need to sit and watch the wheels go round and round more and more in our culture because there is a part of our culture, there's a part of us, and this woman represents that aspect of it, and many of us, and maybe most of us, really, really have gotten our ego caught up in this thing of being busy and doing stuff. And most of the stuff that we're being busy and doing oftentimes has really nothing to do with what's really important. I do an interesting exercise. I do an exercise a lot of times when I'm with groups of people, and I have people, I simply say, I would like everyone to begin yelling out to me, and I have a board and I write this. So I just say, please yell out to me what is most important to you in life, what your priorities are, what your values are. And I've done this with thousands of people, and please
don't repeat what Conan the Barbarian said.
I don't know what he said. What did he say?
I think it was to crush all enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of the women, or something like that.
You're right. I think I remember that. No one's ever said that but Conan. So luckily he hasn't been. He should be, but he hasn't been in one of my workshops yet. So I'm sitting there. No, what happens is, here's the interesting thing. Here's one of the big points I make with my book. And I do this for people on a regular basis. I make it very clear that our priorities and our values do not align with our actions. and that is a problem, okay? So when I have everybody tell me I just say, from your heart of hearts, tell me what's most important to you. What do you believe really matters to you as a person and for the world, and anything goes here, whatever comes to your mind, priorities, values, and I write it on the board, and I just write and write and write and write and write. I call it the seed of our soul, because I believe these things are coming from the essence, what our deepest part of ourselves. And I write all these things down, and by the time the workshop's over, I come back to that list and I point out, do your actions really reflect your highest values and priorities in your life? Mm-hmm. And the answer is inevitably no, it doesn't. I'm doing things, I'm spending money, I'm doing things, I'm saying things, and I'm acting in ways that do not line up with what I have actually literally said is most important to me. And so we've accepted an agenda that is not our own, okay? And we've just, it's a kind of, for lack of a better term, it's kind of a brainwashing thing. We've taken it on, and when we get so busy with like we're talking about, just events and things and do this, that, and the other thing, and we to hit the reset button and to actually ask ourselves, wait a minute, are all these things aligned with my heart's true desires? And I can tell you what they are, because guess what? They're the same thing in every group. You know what I'm saying? They're, with very few exceptions, they're the same thing in every group. What's interesting is what's not in the list. And what's not in the list are events or busyness. What's not in the money has never been put on. Not once has someone said money. Not once has someone said shoes or cars or more clothes or food, more food, because we have all that we need, and yet we spend our lives buying more of that and working to get more of that and eating more of that, and none of it. It's the same stuff. It's like, well, my children and my wife and my passion and my deepest, dreams and these things, and so and peace in my heart and peace in the world. All these things are very, very common. It's what comes up, and yet as we walk through my workshop, I don't point at it. Everybody comes to their own realization that, oh my God, I am spending my time, my money, my energy on stuff that are not on my very own list of what really matters. And so making that shift is the Chotchky challenge, because spending all that time and all that energy on things that don't matter to me is a bunch of wasted time. It's time-Chotchky.
And you think, too, the way we tend to perceive people who are wealthy, with large mansions and lots of things as well, that's what a lot of them do with their money. But you take a look at Steve Jobs, and anybody who's ever read, for instance, a biography that featured Steve Jobs, here's this guy, he's got all the money he'll ever need, and really, he decorated his mansion extremely sparsely. There was almost no furniture in his house except what was necessary, and for him, the whole reason is the clutter would just get into the way of his Zen thing.
Yeah. Oh, and it does. I mean, it gets in the way of the stuff, the excess stuff, and there's scientific evidence. This is not, it's not just a sociological observation.
Sure.
There's scientific proof that it's overwhelming. When we have too much stuff to deal with, we cannot. And Steve Jobs is a great example. Here's a guy, he streamlined his environment so that he could continue to be open and working and getting his ideas and moving in the direction of what he wanted to do with his life, what his mission was, where his heart was. And so why would he fill his environment with stuff that just causes stress and takes time to take care of and all that stuff? Why would he do that? Because he had a clear vision, he had a clear purpose, he knew what he was doing. And part of what I do with my work is help people get that clear vision so that we're not floundering through life, wasting our time and energy on what I would call the Chotchky campaign, using it as a false purpose. We've allowed what you've tapped on with this woman in the show, and what I see in all these people. We've allowed busyness. We've allowed junk and stuff, and to become a false purpose. So this is a big thing I want to point out to people. that we've actually bought the line that, my purpose is to keep up with the Joneses. That's important. It really makes me a worthy person, and my purpose is to get a better car than the last one I had, and that's my purpose. And my purpose is to have more stuff, because if I have more stuff, well, I'll be I'll be seen as a better person by those around me if I have more stuff. And it goes on and on and on. And my point is that is not your purpose. It's not. And being busy is not a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
Being connected to your heart's the only thing that's truly honorable, and living a life from your soul. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't be busy. It should mean you should only be busy about the work of your heart, but not about this other stuff. Get into that zone. There's a zone. There's a way of living that keeps us in touch with our soul, with our heart, with joy, with fun, with love, with compassion, with connection with our loved ones, and with that which we wish to be doing. We all have this dream. We all have things we love to do. But so often we have allowed the busyness of the world and the information that comes into us to distract us from where our heart really lives.
For those of you just joining us, this is the Chotchky Challenge we're talking about, a wonderful book which will talk about how we can clear the clutter from our homes and our hearts and our minds to discover the true treasure of your soul. Our guest today, Barry Dennis. Now, Barry, once a person expunges, so to speak, and I think sometimes it really feels that way to a lot of people when they start to see, I can release this one thing that I thought was so important to me, and pretty soon they release another thing and then another thing, and pretty soon the momentum gets to a point they realize, wow, this already makes me feel different. There's already a shift happening. What's that experience like usually?
Well, it's beautiful, because what's happening, you're beginning the process of attaining, you're on the journey now to attaining the highest level of consciousness known to humanity. It's what I call Liberace.
Liberace.
Yes.
We don't mean the piano player.
Well, Liberace, and any similarity between Liberace and Liberace is purely coincidental. However, he did wear a lot of blingotchki. It makes you wonder, is there something more going on here?
He was very flamboyantski.
He was flamboyantski. So yeah, Liberace. It's one of my words that I made up, but there's this wonderful thing behind it. You become liberated from your Chotchky, and so you become liberated from those chains. I mean, all of our Chotchky on all levels. So my book runs you through the 4 levels of Chotchky. There's thing-ochky, which are the physical things. And there's body-ochky, which is anything in excess to our body. And there's mind-ochky, which is information and stuff that goes into our brain that takes up valuable mind space and time and causes stress. And then there's what I call soul-ochky, which is generally emotional-ochky. And those are all chains. They're all chains that weigh us down. It's kind of like the partner in this, the Scrooge, the partner who wears the chains and comes in. Scrooge is actually a perfect metaphor, a wonderful story, and it's in my book, because Scrooge represents what I call the Chotchky mind. His whole purpose, was to acquire, and yet he just lived in so much fear of losing it, and he lived in so much fear of not having enough, and there's no matter what happened, he could never have enough, and his partner comes in the room, the ghost, and he's dragging these chains around because those chains represent his life and how he lived it. And he says to his old partner Scrooge, Scrooge says first, I live the way I live because it's good business. And his partner says, business? Our business was the business of humanity. And so he changes, of course, in the end, Scrooge changes his mind, and suddenly he experiences Liberace. Suddenly, he's able to let go and use his energy, his life, his time, and his money for good. And it fills him with joy. And the scene in the end where he's dancing around the room and he's just so ecstatic, that's what happens to us. That's the joy that comes. That's the freedom that comes, that moment of awakening, of revelation for Scrooge. We're all Scrooge to some degree or another. We all live in this fearful consciousness, and when we begin to let go, when we begin to feel the freedom that comes, as you were talking about, when we actually let something go and go, wait a minute, I don't miss that. And, what if I let go of all this? I don't miss that. And then we begin to realize how much energy we wasted having it and getting it and acquiring it and collecting it and finding a place for it and all that, and then packing it up when you leave and bring it. Once you realize all the energy that it takes to do all that, you start to get, my goodness, boy, I could do so many things. It's so liberating. Not only do I have enough money to go to Hawaii next month if I wish to, because I'm going to stop wasting time, and I sold all this junk. I got rid of all this junk, and I gave it away to people who actually use it, because that's the other side of the story here. I call it turning your burdens into blessings. We've got so much that it's actually burdening us, but there are those who could use our excess. And so by giving to those who actually need, we've done something good with something that actually caused us stress. So it's that feeling, it's elation. I mean, people who actually get to the point, and a big part of my book too is, recognizing the Chotchky in all levels, and a big part of it is people-ochky, friend-ochky, looking at who you're surrounding yourself with, and beginning to actually let go of the people in our lives that keep us stuck in old habits that no longer serve us. And as we begin to let go of all those levels, we begin to experience this liberaczki, and it feels good. It's like dancing around in a room like Scrooge, just saying, "Oh my God, I'm free, and it's a wonderful thing to do, and it's why I do what I do. I love to see people experience that. I love to see that happen. I love to watch light bulbs go on and lives change and lives transform. It's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, and it's very fun too, Barry, just to become so fluid, so yielding, such as the weeping willow tree,
yes.
And to flow just like water. You just, like you've been describing, you just have this tremendous liberation that now all things become possible regardless of the age that
yes.
you may be.
Oh my goodness! And in this day and age, we have 2 lifetimes at least, and that's, I'm not making that up. The average lifespan not long ago was 30. It depends on what culture you're talking about, but most of our life, and this comes back to this fear consciousness. Most of humanity's existence, the average lifespan was 30 years old approximately, and we live, in our culture at least, we live to be, it's getting around 80, 90, it's not uncommon at all. Now that's gone down now because of what I described earlier. It's actually going down because of our health problems, because we have so much we don't know when to stop. So we need to, it's time to learn when to stop. But yeah, we live 2, 3, 4 lifetimes. And my goodness, people begin anew on a regular basis, at 40 or 50 years old, sort of saying, okay, I've got a whole other life to live. What do I want to do now? And what's so beautiful about that is at that point we can really begin to wake up and see where, what we did in this past lifetime. What did I do these last 40 years or 50 years that I now can see was very foolish, or I now can see was a waste of time, and I get another lifetime, and I recognize all the Chotchky in there. I recognize all the grudge-ochkys that I was holding that was only hurting me. So my book puts you through a process of letting go of those emotional chains of grudges, and learning to forgive and let go of that hurt, because all that does is hurt you. It doesn't do anything. Any grudges we hold toward another person is just poison in our own system. It doesn't do anything to them.
Right.
It's just hurting us. So forgiveness is the most selfish thing we can do. It's about letting yourself go of those chains, letting go of those chains that bind you emotionally, and letting go, of course, is non-attachment. Letting go is the underlying current of my entire book. So I found a new way of saying it, a fun way of saying it, and of pointing it out. But when we let go of those emotional tchotchkes, emotional ochkes, and along with our physical attachments to things, boy, there is so much freedom there. It's hard to even quantify it. It's just like soaring. It's like your soul's been set free.
I think what's amazing, too, if people understand, and this was something that I had encountered probably about 15 to 20 years ago as I was beginning to understand physics, and there was the vacuum effect as it came across, where as you release, so you gain. And
yes.
and I was astounded for people out there who think they need to hold on to something, that they're hoarding, whatever it may be in their lives, where they just feel this need to save and to collect because they're afraid of, as you mentioned earlier in the program, that feeling of lack, that there isn't enough, so I need to make sure that I get mine. I can tell you unequivocally, let it go, and you'll be amazed at how something, a lot of times way better than what you had, fills that space. And pretty soon as you do this in a regular practice, and I've done this with furniture, with televisions, with stereos, simply giving it away,
Yep.
just because somehow that space, whether I buy it or it's given to me, it fills itself. And you sit there scratching your head going, I just wonder how I acquired that. And it starts opening up a mystery in your life, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. A wonderful statement is, don't let your good become the enemy of your better.
Right.
You see, we have all this stuff and we cling to it, and we may see it as good, and it's actually causing us stress. We may think of it, oh no, this is good, but it's the enemy of your better. There's something more glorious. You can't. A good metaphor is a bookshelf. Once your bookshelf is full of a bunch of Chotchky, because you're not actually going to read most of them anyway, well, what's going to happen now is there's no room for a better book. Why? Because it's full of books that are no good, that you personally are resonating with, and so until you let go of some of those books, guess what? You're not going to have any more, period. Because, and if you do, they're going to end up on your floor, and then you're going to trip on them. It's just crazy, right? See, the only way for a better book to come into your life is to let go of the other ones. It's very simple, right?
Now, let me put it to you this way for our listeners, too, Barry, is as a radio host for almost 15 years, having wonderful people such as yourself on the program, as I used to meet with them and interview a lot of these people face-to-face, and they had a book, they would ultimately sign the book for me. And what was wonderful is they didn't just sign best wishes like you would typically see at a book signing. I'd get really nice messages, real personal stuff. Pretty soon I've got, this bookshelf and a half or so of all these books that people have signed, and I would show people as they came in the house. They were just really impressed, but I started thinking after a while, I don't want to have to move and take, these are very heavy autographs.
Yes, they are.
So I started clipping out the pages and then just giving the books away itself. But you could see, how something like that can, for me, if I can do that, you folks can certainly give away a non-signed book.
Yeah. Oh, it's true. Books can be quite a burden, and here I am, an author of a book. But here's the thing: it's a good subject because books are a good example of how this whole Chotchky thing works. I have books that I will keep forever. Why? Because I know for me, I will reread them.
Sure.
I read them over and over and over and over and over again. And I tell people often, I say, look, there's a lot of Chotchky, but at the same time, it's mostly our Chotchky mind. In other words, our brain, we've trained ourselves to be this way. We get books and, we don't. Did you know that approximately 90% of all self-help books are never read past the first chapter?
No kidding.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
what's going on there for people, and I say, okay, yeah, there's some bad books out there, but for the most part, if you're buying them like through Hay House or through a good publisher, they're not bad books, they're good books. And so what's happening, though, is our Chotchky mind, which tells us, because this is the way we live, we're not patient enough anymore. We're not, it's like, so we read one chapter and we go, oh, that didn't transform me. That didn't do it. So next book, read the first chapter up. Nope, that one didn't do it. Next book, that one do it. Next workshop, that one didn't do it. Next retreat, that one didn't do it. Well, I tell my people, any one of those books could change your life forever if you really, really took the time to read it and implement what it says and use it as a manual instead of just going, oh, well, that one didn't do it, that one didn't do it. So I usually say it's not the book, it's the brain, it's the Chotchky mind that gets rid of all the books. And so, yes, there are books that we want to get rid of, and then there are books that if we really love them, be willing to read them more than once. Be willing to read them over and over again and highlight them and write on them and let them seep into you so that it actually changes your life. And
speaking of the mind, I remember about probably 20 years ago, there was someone at a party I was talking with who, I don't know if you would want to call it arrogantly, said, I would just love to know everything that there is to know. And then I simply asked him, what then would you do with that information? He says, well, I really don't know, but it would just be great to know everything there is to know. And I says, don't you think that's an awfully big waste of space?
Well, that's funny.
It just made no sense to me. You acquire information for just like a lot of things, it's to put it to use. And if it's not useful, then, of course, it's useless information like a lot of things that we keep. For instance, like that sentimental toothbrush that you've had since Boy Scouts.
Well, a big part of the informachky, In my book, I talk a lot about all the excess information that we are
oh my
bombarded
goodness,
with.
it's crazy, isn't it?
It's insane. And so I have a chapter on, on the internet. I have stuff about Facebook Chotchky and email Chotchky, and then magazine Chotchky, which is just insane. And it takes work. It's like it goes back to what I said before. In the past, we had to work really hard just to get food, clothing, and shelter, and every day was a struggle. Well, now it's over. It's just everywhere, and now we're excess. We have too much of it. Well, with information, that's what's happening. My God, you can't not. It takes discipline to avert our eyes from all the excess information so it doesn't distract us, right? I mean, people get on the internet and talk about a distraction. You can get on there and you see you're looking one thing up, or you want to look at one YouTube video, or you want to do something. The next thing you know, an hour has slipped away and it's been useless. You haven't gotten really anything out of it.
and for me, I can't spend that much time on the internet. For me, it's the bank statements, accounting, and maybe to see if anything's in at the library. If there is a little research, maybe. But, after 30 minutes to an hour tops, I'm done. I just don't even want to see it anymore.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And all the magazines and the checkout stand, I call them checkout. I believe they're called, I don't think it's an accident, checkout stand. Because we get in there and we completely check out of our higher consciousness. We're standing there, and this is a really wonderful metaphor or way to explain what I call the Chotchky campaign, because it's coming at us on many different levels. So there we are, grocery shopping, which I believe should be a sacred thing, gathering of our food, which sustains our life. But we get into the checkout stand and we completely check out because we're surrounded by some of the most negative energy. You look up on the shelves and what do you got standing there? Well, a bunch of magazines, and there's images of people on there that are they're so beautiful that, well, I could never be that beautiful. That's impossible. But they're not that beautiful either because they've been airbrushed. But we don't think about that. We just think, oh, they're so beautiful and I don't feel worthy. I feel kind of unworthy of that. And then there's the gossip, all the things that they're trying to get us to think about. Why in the name of God do we care what's going on in these celebrities' lives? Well, it's a big issue, and it's crazy that we get so caught up in it. Man, why do we want to, first of all, why do we care, A, and then B, why do we want to hurt them on the other hand? Why do we want to hurt them with lies and continue to just, look who broke up with whom and who's dating who, and it's half the time it's not true anyway. So we get caught up in that, and then underneath it, so it gets us kind of spinning around in this negative energy, and we might feel guilty or unworthy or not good enough or weird, and then we look at the pictures, and they're so beautiful, we think, well, I don't know if I should go on a fast or if I should go on a binge. And so then we look below those magazines, which are full of negative information, and what do we see right below it?
Amazing.
A bunch of candy bars.
Right. The sugar high.
The sugar high. So these magazines trigger this thing, and we think, well, I should either go on a fast or go on a binge. And, well, we're not going to go on a fast because look what they gave us right here. So then people, we grab a candy bar to shove down the guilt and, to put a little excess food in our body, which all that stuff is of course, excess, and it creates a sort of a numbness in our body, so we don't have to think about what we've been surrounded with. It just goes around and around and around and around like that. One thing tempting us one way and then pulling us the other way and pulling us another way and pulling us another way. We gain tons of weight, and then we spend tons of money trying to get rid of that weight, for which we spent tons of money gaining that weight, and it just goes around and around and around and around. It's the Chotchky campaign, and getting off that treadmill, just stepping off, bringing awareness to what the heck is happening is Liberaczki. It is that total freedom. It just lets you, like we talked about, it gives you this feeling of, my goodness, man, suddenly you just feel free from all of it.
And the thing, too, Barry, is that we also find ourselves, and this is something I've brought up in past programs, is that in America we seem to have an interesting paradox. We love our heroes when they rise. We love them more when they fall. And we love them again when they rise again.
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of thinking is that?
No, it's nonsense. I mean, for the most part, it's nonsense. And it's getting caught up, and I have a whole lot of this in my book, because it's very important for us to realize what you just said, to get clear about what the heck's going on here. And what it is we get caught up in the celebrities' lives and, quote, the heroes' lives and these people's lives, because why? It's an excuse and it's a distraction from our own life.
Right?
Instead of, because facing our demons and facing our own and our dreams, facing our soul, our different ways of saying it. I mean, to say face our demons and face our soul, I would say are almost the same thing, because our demons oftentimes are the very things that simply we should be doing, and we know we should be about doing this, and we're not. So so all this gives us an excuse not to look at our own lives. It gives us an excuse not to take inventory. It gives us an excuse not to look at what we're letting fall apart, when we know in our heart of hearts this is what we should be about, and this is what we should be doing. And in doing so, it will bring what? True happiness, fulfillment, and purpose. It will. But you've got to get over the hill. We've all got to sort of push, and we need discipline, and we need commitment, and we need to get past. But all this junk we're talking about, it gives us an excuse, and it distracts us, and it takes our attention off of it, and it makes us feel, just like la-di-da, that's not, look, no, we have to talk about this, and this is what's going on in the world, da-da-da, all the while. Our soul is in there whispering, hey, but what about me? What about the life you're supposed to lead?
Right.
What about, you see what I'm saying? What about
I do.
the glorious life that you have to give to the world? Forget about this other guy. He has nothing to do with you. Brad Pitt has nothing to do with you.
Right.
Nothing. Angelina Jolie has nothing to do with you. Yes, the only thing they have to do with you is they have a job. It's called to entertain. Sure, go and enjoy a movie they do. That's it.
Right.
Other than that, that's it. They have nothing to do with it. Their personal life isn't as good as you think it is. It's a joke. They're not happy. And the ones who look like sure, they may be happy. I'm just saying they're not happier than you should be. They're not.
Right.
They're not happier than you should be.
Yeah, their degree of happiness isn't that much more than yours.
It's not, and
I
it's
agree.
probably less because they're in more stress than you are. Believe me, they're under so much stress trying to live up to the ideal that we've created of them.
And it's the same thing with athletes too, Barry, as people go, well, these guys are making millions of dollars a year to play sports, and I'd say to them, if you realized what these people, especially your stars and superstars, really have to do every day, I think you'd be pretty happy with where you're at in life.
It is so true. It is so true. And it's the same with anyone in the limelight. We've created a culture, and it's the Chotchky mind that tells us that being famous and rich is the ultimate goal, okay? And so, but we can't quite do that, so it makes us feel like less than. So we eat the candy bar, right? But anyway, being famous and rich is the ultimate goal, and if you could only do that, why, then you'll be happy.
Right.
Then you will have reached, that's the end goal, and that's the place where bliss and joy hang out. Well, baloney. Try living that life. Why do you think Michael Jackson completely lost his mind? Why do you think Whitney Houston? Why do you think Elvis? Why do you think Marilyn Monroe? Why do you think Lindsay Lohan? Because it's insane in that world. That's why. It's insane.
It sure is.
And for us to think we want to get there is completely messed up. We need to be here right now in our own lives and make it glorious. And that's all we're supposed to do. Lord knows it.
Now, Barry, how about we do this for the short time that we have left here on the program with the Chotchky Challenge? Send out to our listeners some steps they can take today to begin to take on this Chotchky Challenge. Obviously, the first one will give out a website where they can find out how to go about getting your book if that's the direction they want to go. But what can people do who are listening right now to begin taking the Chotchky Challenge? Where can they start?
Yeah, I'm gonna hand out two very different things. The first thing is in our lives, in the physical thing. If there's an area in your life that now almost everyone feels it, and if they don't, it's usually because they're not being aware of how it's affecting them. But to look at an area of your life that is in excess, and so a lot of times, for example, it's our closets. Most of us have way more clothes than we ever would wear, and it's actually causing stress. What we experience when we get dressed is we often feel what I call apparelization.
I like that word.
Where our apparel actually makes us paralyzed because we stand there going, I don't know, I have nothing to wear, which is how insane we are. How can we ever say we have nothing? I have nothing.
Like Rodney
to wear.
Dangerfield in the movie Back to School, he says to his wife Adrienne Barbeau, "You've got 4 closets of nothing to wear."
Yeah. Well, that is us to some degree. It is really. I mean, it's like we get paralyzed. So whatever area, though, however, I like to get people to try to get rid of some of their shoes and stuff and their clothes because somebody else actually can use it. And we have such attachments to shoes and things that we're not using. It actually points out how crazy we become. So, but whatever it is, it could be a closet, it could be a garage, a trunk, a drawer, whatever. An area, if it's kind of bugging you, you know what? If you spend 30 minutes on one of those areas, you can create and just bring it to Goodwill or recycle it or whatever. You will see what will happen in that one thing, and you'll see how it feels. You'll see how clear it makes your mind. If you clear your closet out and make it really just get down to what you actually wear, that's all I'm asking. Not things you don't wear. You will feel so free. You'll get up in the morning, you'll open your closet, and you'll be like, wow, bang, done. And you step away, and you're on, and you're off, and you're gone. You're wearing your favorite shoes, and you're wearing some of your favorite clothes, and it's that easy. It's a beautiful thing. So there's the physical thing, and then another end of the spectrum. I would invite someone of emotional Chotchky. So that's a physical thing. I would ask everybody to do both, but at least choose one. If there's somebody that in your life that you're holding a grudge against, that is causing poison in you, and it's causing stress, just as having too much junk, just as a hoarder, has too much junk and can't move through the life when we're holding emotional Chotchky in our being. It's like that same thing. And so, I would suggest another thing I would suggest for someone is to consider the truth that forgiveness and letting go is a selfish thing. It's for you.
You know, Barry, and just to touch on that, I wanted to give a suggestion on just what you're talking about there. This was by Marianne Williamson. And I thought this was a wonderful way to do this because you can create this as a ritual. And I've tried this, and it's pretty incredible that you simply spend a moment, you think about this person as you're talking about, that you have this grudge, you have it in form, and it could be, in the last week or in the last year, it could be for most of your life you've had this. Take a moment to sit down and write on paper the story that led you to feeling the way you do toward this person. And then simply you go out to a nice area, a sacred area. It could be anywhere. It could be your backyard, anywhere where you can do what you're about to do here. Then you simply read this statement out loud and say, I forgive myself for this moment in my life. Crumple up the paper, light it on fire, and let it go to the wind. And I thought, what a wonderful way to release and let go, because now it's gone for good.
Yeah.
And boy, so I thought that was a real powerful way that she suggested to do a forgiveness ritual. So
yeah, it's a nice ritual. And I've got a whole sort of way of, in my book, steps to go through that.
Ritual-oskies?
Yeah, it's a ritual, but it's not Chotchky because it's not too much.
Not Chotchky, okay.
It only becomes an Chotchky when it's in excess.
When it's okay, there you go.
I have a ritual that runs you through a beautiful experience of letting go and getting clear of that and working on that and really changing. My book in many places helps us to begin to change our mind about what it means to be holding emotional grudges, which is emotional Chotchky, and what a powerful thing it is. And so I just did two extremes, and in between you've got body Chotchky and mind Chotchky, but those are two of the other two opposite ends of what I do in my book.
Now, tell us about a website people can find out more about your work.
Yeah, www.barryadennis. So it's my name and my middle initial, BARRYADENNIS.com.
The Chotchky Challenge. Take it and release and liberate your soul for more productivity and especially more creativity, because ultimately that's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Barry Dennis, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. Take that message out there and keep people flowing, because what the world is certainly in lack of is wonderful inspiration and creativity, and we're so glad that you're out in the world being able to help people turn on their lights. It's such a pleasure to have you here on our program today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a joy.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. Again, take the Chotchky Challenge. Go to barryadennis.com, find out more about that, and get yourself the Chotchky Challenge book. We also encourage you to join us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do have a free weekly e-newsletter that comes out, so be sure to subscribe to that as well. I'm Daniel Davis. This is Beyond 50, and remember, live your day past halfway.